Scooters. He lives over there. Let's bring this meeting to order.
You know what I mean?
Invocation will be done by me. Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand, and guide us in a wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, call the roll, please.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling?
Here.
Mr. Freeman?
Here.
Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Marne?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Approval of minutes, January 18th, 2022, regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Tabled legislation, we have none. New legislation. Ordinance number 22-0-005.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Vance's Law Enforcement Supply for the purchase of Taser X2s, related equipment and training, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief Gunch, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The Monroe Police Department currently uses the Taser X2 as its standard-issued conducted electrical weapon for patrol officers and detectives. The X2 was phased in over a 3-year period between 2013 to 2015 and have an expected service life of 5 years. Overall, the X2s have performed well. However, some are experiencing issues with the display. We currently have 43 X2s that are burned out, that have a burned out display. The Taser display is necessary to tell officers the life remaining in the battery, cartridge information, any malfunction codes, and may come up with the Taser. Additionally, the display counts down the amount of time that the Taser is being deployed on the subject. The only supplier for the Taser is Vance's Law Enforcement Supply in Columbus. Current state bid pricing for the X2 is $1,103.31 for a cost of $47,442.33 to replace the 43 Tasers. Additional batteries, live and training cartridges, extra holsters, and a training suit will also need to be purchased for an additional $10,970.85 for a total project cost of $58,413.18. The Taser is really a critical tool for law enforcement officers and is proven to assist officers in controlling resisting subjects while reducing the likelihood of injuries to officers and subjects. And I recommend approval for the purchase.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes. Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 22-0-005 is passed. Ordinance number 22-0-006.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to perform all actions necessary to accept Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council 2022 Energized Community Grant Funds and declaring an emergency.
Council? Mr. Flipiak, you have anything on that? I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you, Mr. President. And Council, as a member of NOPAC, as a long member of NOPAC, we are eligible for energy grants that have been distributed for several years running now. And Matt Schweiker and Public Works have done a good job of helping to upgrade a number of our city facilities with more energy-efficient equipment. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Schweiker.
Thank you. For the 5th consecutive year, the City of Mentor is eligible to receive a grant through the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council's NOPEC Energized Community Grant. The 2022 grant will be for $111,468. These funds are intended to be used for energy-saving projects. Past uses of these funds include new boilers for the pools at the Civic Center and Morton Parks, along with new exterior windows at the police department. The likely use of these funds will be for energy-saving efforts at the new recreation facility. Thank you.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes. Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance 22-0-006 has passed. Ordinance number 22-0-007.
An ordinance approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a lease addendum with the Mentor Firefighters Historical Association for use of a storage building located at 7262 Jackson Street.
Mr. Flippia?
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, with the construction of our new emergency response facility behind Fire Station Number 4, we moved most of our specialty equipment into that building, which included our bomb squad and the equipment that was also stored as a part of that. We have had a good working relationship with the Firefighters Historical Association. They both keep up and help us to run a number of our Safety Village programs. Council has entertained them recently in our chamber, and I know some members of council have been working closely with members of that association. And I think we agree as an administration, and I think council, hopefully council does as well, that allowing them to utilize this building for purposes that will enhance some of our children's safety programs out there is a wise use of that space. We don't have an immediate need for that. It's not particularly well placed for any city operations, and they've done a good job of caretaking the old fire station there, so we'd like to allow them to utilize that. It would require an addendum to the existing lease that the city has with them to utilize the old fire station. The lease is revocable with short notice if we ever do identify a municipal purpose for that. So we would recommend approval.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. President, I would just like to acknowledge the hard work that Ron Wassam and the folks over there do at trying to promote safety for the kids in the city and adults as well. So they're doing a good job, and I'm sure they'll be great caretakers of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Kirchner. Ordinance number 22-0-007 is passed. Ordinance number 22-0-008.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Classic Ford for the purchase of 8 2022 Ford Utility Police Interceptors and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief Gunch, please.
Yes, sir. For 2022, $311,000 has been budgeted for the purchase of 5 new marked police vehicles, including upfitting costs and 2 administration vehicles. In addition to the 5 patrol cars, 2 patrol cars were involved in crashes recently that have been declared total losses by the insurance company. We'll need to replace these vehicles as well using the city's insurance expense account. The state contract price for the patrol vehicles is $37,593.19. Including delivery options and 6-year extended warranty. Classic Ford is quoted a price of $37,550 for each. For the 7 patrol cars, that will end up being $262,850. For the 1 administrative police interceptor, it was quoted at $35,800 by Classic Ford also. State bid price is $35,818 for a total cost of the 8 vehicles, $298,650. I recommend approval for the purchase of the 7 marked vehicles.
Council?
Move
Mr.
to
President?
suspend. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to make a comment. I just want to express appreciation to the administration for the fact that they get the budget numbers to us early enough, which allows council to pass the budget, and we can see these things come into fruition very early in the year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dowling.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 22-0-008 is passed. Ordinance number 22-0-009.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Classic Ford for the purchase of a 2022 Ford Explorer for the administrative use of the police department and declaring an emergency.
Go right to Chief Gunch.
Well, I think Chief has already explained this as utilized for police administration.
Move to suspend.
Second, but I guess question for Law Director, why isn't it in a different ordinance?
The administrative vehicle is not being purchased through state contract. It's in fact not a marked police cruiser, so it's different specs. So those vehicles are all of a certain make, manufacture, and specification. This is a completely, although it's still a Ford Explorer at heart, it's a completely different vehicle. It's not being purchased through any state contract. As you'll note, they went out and got bids, and this was the lowest bid that they achieved. So we're treating them, we're not dividing one purchase, we're treating them as discrete purchases of different species of equipment.
Be kind of cool if it was like a James Bond edition or something.
It may be.
Chargers.
It is more expensive than the
Yeah, that's
Interceptors,
why I was-
which is sort of.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. I saw that part.
Martin, you got a second?
A little
Yes,
more
second.
comfortable than them, too, Joe.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 22-0-009 has passed. Second readings, we have none. Third readings, we have none. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Council, we have a request for a pavement open cut from Aqua, Ohio. This would be located at the intersection of Bellflower and Fireside Court for a new 6-inch water main project that will actually be installed on Fireside. It's a 12 by 12 open cut. It's been reviewed by engineering. We recommend approval. The majority of the water line would be bored.
Glad Bruce isn't here. Julie, call the roll.
Move to approve.
Second.
Oh, sorry, Ray.
That's it. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, council. As the city prepares for another round of winter storms this week, we want to remind our residents to be safe by stocking up, staying warm, tread carefully outside, and please don't approach any downed power lines, and to check on your loved ones regularly. Additional winter safety tips are on the fire department's Facebook page. First Energy electric utilities are implementing storm response plans. We have had some contact with them as recently as today, which includes staffing up additional dispatchers, damage assessors, and analysts at regional dispatch offices, as well as arranging to bring in additional line and substation and forestry personnel. So we're hoping that their services are not required, but hopefully will be better prepared than we would otherwise. Council, I just want to make a quick word about sidewalks in the city, because I know some of you have gotten some concerns or comments from our residents as well as the administration has. And just a reminder to our public that responsibility for sidewalk clearing is on the property owner. That includes both in residential areas as well as commercial areas. The city does provide some assistance from time to time as a courtesy in commercial areas. Predominantly, that's on Menor Avenue. We do that because we, at times, contribute to the problem with the sidewalks along Menor Avenue being predominantly adjacent to the curbs. Again, so that the community is not, we say this often, but it's worth saying again, when we have large storm events, the city's priority is on the main streets, followed by making sure that residential streets are passable. That doesn't necessarily mean clear. We want to get them passable. So if we get a 3-inch snow or a 4 or 5-inch snow, many of those residential streets won't get touched right away because you can still drive through them, but we'll come back and then as first possible opportunity. The idea being once you get to those main collector streets, you're able to get out and get on your way to work or school or whatever you are going. Again, we're also working on public facility access at the same time. After the main roads are cleared, we'll get back into clearing the residential properties. Then a lot of cleanup on a large event like we had, which was really followed up by multiple events. with the cold weather that we've had, a lot of this snow piles up at intersections. We look to move that out of the way next, followed by clearing of catch basins. That'll be particularly important tomorrow if we get some of the rain that's expected. And then when time permits, we will try to get and help out on that, predominantly that Menor Avenue sidewalk corridor. Now that also assumes that we have the ability to do that. So you may see some sections of Menor Avenue sidewalk have been cleared and others that have not, because some of the equipment that we utilize, we use small pieces of track equipment that really is wide enough to fit down the sidewalk, but it has about as much horsepower as you can get out of a piece of equipment of that size. Some of it just can't push away 6-8 feet of ice and snow. So Mr. Schweikert's crew in some spots will slowly but surely over time remove some of those big heavy areas that typically, that will in many cases take heavy equipment. So getting a large piece out there takes a large crew, takes traffic control, and it can be difficult. We encourage our neighbors, I'll say this as well, snowfalls of this size, we're certainly more lenient in both residential and commercial areas. There are a lot of residential areas in the city that have no sidewalk that's passable right now, and that's not all of them. It's probably not even the majority of them, but there are plenty of areas. And so while we encourage people to get out there and to help their neighbors as much as possible, obviously we can't be in a position to enforce that with everyone. So there is a certain level of leniency that the city has in this. A reminder to all property owners, they are still liable for what happens on that sidewalk. So again, that's just a word of caution in that regard. And again, as I said earlier, we encourage neighbors to help each other as best they can, including ride sharing if you know that there's someone out there that depends on walking as a primary mode of transportation. So that isn't many, but we're doing the best we can out there. And right now, Mr. Schweikert's crews are gearing up for what looks like to be a very interesting and testy period for the community. So unfortunately, there aren't a lot of places to put snow right now, and we'll be looking to get creative in that regard, as will every resident that's still got 6-foot-high piles next to their own driveway. So stay tuned, and I'm sure that we will continue to do our best.
Oh, Mr. Flippek, fire hydrants.
Yes, yeah, good, thank you, good point. And again, we certainly encourage people to dig out their own fire hydrants and serving their neighborhood as best as they can. We're also getting a number of complaints about, mentioned private haulers as well, because we get a number of those complaints. Big snows happen, the private haulers with blades on the front of their pickup trucks come out and they push the snow out of driveways. Sometimes they push it in places where they shouldn't, in front of fire hydrants, in front of other on people's lawn areas, perhaps where children are picked up for bus locations. So we do get on top of those pretty well, and we've talked to several private contractors over the course of this snow season about problems that have been identified to us by other residents in neighborhoods. For the most part, we've been successful at reminding them of their responsibility as well. So a little bit of patience from everybody, and we'll continue to stay on top of it. And I'm convinced that we have the best snow removal crew in Northeast Ohio, and I don't think Mr. Schweikert's going to disagree with me on that, but we will continue to do our best. And other things. The traffic signal for Trader Joe's at Menor Avenue and Wayside Drive intersection became operational on Friday. The signal will be monitored throughout the week for proper operation and adjusted as is necessary. Trader Joe's grand opening has been pushed to next Monday at 8 a.m. Due to the weather. A short 5-minute ceremony will precede the store opening, and we were notified of that. I don't know if we're necessarily invited to participate, but I'm sure that they would appreciate it if some of us could be there. Aqua Ohio recently advised the city that it anticipates water main replacements in 2022. for Bellflower Court, Bellflower Road, Fireside Drive, Old Farm Lane, Finley Drive, and Meldon Drive. So some pretty big areas. Engineering staff is already coordinating the impact of those replacements, and we'll keep council up to date on how that may impact traffic in those areas as the year progresses. Olympic Day Skate with Nancy Kerrigan is on Sunday, February 6th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. at the Menor Ice Arena. There is a sold-out meet and greet which will follow that, and I'll be sending some information out to council for you to attend as well. Unveiled exhibit reception with artist Eddie Mitchell is on for Friday, February 11th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in the Municipal Center lobby and is free and open to all. And deer culling starts this week at Wildwood, Krieger Park, the Lagoons, Morton Park, Blackbrook, and Becker Drive. And an aerial deer study was performed last week by ODNR in cooperation with our staff. We expect that an interpretation of that information will be available in a couple of weeks or so, and we'll share that information with the council when it is. Finally, council, we have some new businesses that we're very happy to announce. Brush Boutique is now doing business at 8920 Menor Avenue. Brow Language Studio 20 at 7636 Menor Avenue. Floor Coverings International at 8805 East Avenue. Bibby Bop's Asian Grill will be opening on Saturday, February 5th at 7851 Reynolds Road. And of course, Trader Joe's will be opening on the 7th at 9470 Menor Avenue. So we, again, appreciate their investment and trust in our community, and we wish them great success. That's all.
Mr. Flipiak, thanks for clearing up the snow situation and making it clear to everyone that they're responsible for their commercial. I don't think commercial was understood, but they're also liable for cleaning up their sidewalks. I appreciate that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Kirschner, go ahead.
along those lines, has there ever been any discussion with some of these larger shopping areas about their responsibility for cleaning their sidewalks off?
Yeah, many times over the years, and I think in most of the small events, well, let me put it this way. I think it's fair to say that the courtesy that the city extends tends to get appreciated more and more because we don't really see a lot of activity early on. I mean, part of the problem, too, is in some of the large drive approaches coming off of Menor Avenue, the snow gets pushed onto the sidewalk, and then our plows put some of it on there as well. And so it creates a real problem. And in a lot of cases, and I think, Mr. Schweikert, you might want to address this, but what we see is that it's left for us much of the time. So, yes, they are aware of it. Yes, we have had discussions over the years. It probably is not a bad idea to remind them of that responsibility from time to time. Again, our part tends to be a little bit later in the game, and it's a mixed bag. I mean, some properties are very good at it, others less so.
What's that? Is it Bombardier or what? Bombardier?
Yeah.
Equipment is pretty old, isn't it?
We have a couple pieces that, some is a little older than other, but it's pretty much the same type of equipment that that every community really uses for that. You can only get so much power out of a vehicle.
This snow was a little bit too much anyways, wasn't it?
And a lot of this is, at this point, with all the cold weather, it's ice. It's turned to ice. We've looked at in the past, some of those small skid loading pieces like we have for the sidewalks have attachments to them. We'll have real strong blowers, or almost works like your residential snow blower, but these things are heavy duty. But the problem that we have in places like Menor Avenue is there's no good place to put it. If you're pushing it, you're either pushing it back into the road a lot of times, which we do, and then our crews will come behind that. You've seen that many times over the years, where we'll try to push snow off of the sidewalks back onto the road for our crews to pick up. But then other times, but if you're pushing it on in many cases, probably most cases in the heavy business area, you have parking lots that are right there, so you can't really blow snow onto their property and onto cars and things like that. So it's tricky. I mean, anytime you're dealing with, 5, 6 lanes of traffic on any roadway as busy as Menor Avenue is, it's going to create some interesting challenges like that. Most cases, a situation like this comes around very infrequently.
Right.
It's every few years at most.
Until Wednesday. Or Thursday. No, I want to thank Matt and the crew there. Nobody knows how taxing that is to plow all night and then plow for hours and hours. It's not easy. It beats your body up and they get exhausted, and I think they did a great job personally, so.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Well, Mr. President, and also administration, great job on the chill out. It's a lot of fun, good turnout. I think everyone had a good time.
We had snow this year. That
Yeah,
was
well, it's either hot or really cold,
it's snow and cold, but the ice sculptures are still out there.
Yeah,
Doing good.
You guys
They're
did a
doing
nice
good.
job with it.
You're going to be there a while.
Clerk's correspondence.
Nothing to report.
Council, you're in possession of the Community Arts Commission, October 7th, 2021, and November 4th, 2021, and the Municipal Planning Commission, December 9th, 2021. Old business. New business.
Mr. President,
Mr. Kirschner.
we have an appointment to make this evening, and I would like to nominate Joseph McNamara to serve the remainder of a 3-year term on the Fair Housing Board ending 12/31/2023.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Joe McNamara will serve the remainder of the 3-year term on the Fair Housing Board ending 12/31/2023. Persons before council, we have none.
Mr. President,
Mr. Marne.
I'd like to move to adjourn into executive session to discuss pending legal and council personnel.
I have a second.
Second.
Julie?
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Anyone else?
What else? What?
For an executive session.
That's enough.
Oh, yeah. Mr. President, I would move that we go back in the regular council session.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. President, I would move to adjourn.
Second?
Julie, call the roll. No. Meeting's
you, though.
adjourned.